We are in the air. Some familiar faces already, getting ready to start. Fantastic. So, okay, I think I can start welcoming everyone. It's very nice to have you back. I really hope that you had a very nice Easter break. Now it's time to start a new webinar series from Food for Sustainability and Grow. This is an important cycle. We'll be discussing the critical topic of precision agriculture. And throughout this series, we'll be delving into this exciting world of precision agriculture. We will explore how advanced technologies are in fact revolutionizing farming practices, particularly for enhanced efficiency and sustainability. So throughout these entire cycles, we will be hearing about what satellites can do for agriculture, as well as enzymatic knowledge, robots, DNA sequencing, and many other. Yes, we'll have a little bit of everything to provide you enough food for thought for you to continue your everyday work. And for sure, this exciting topic also brings some challenges. And the challenge of precision agriculture, they range from complexity of data integration, high initial costs, skills gap, interoperability issues, and privacy data concerns, and some even point that can be some environmental impacts in terms of the practices that we are implementing. So let's stay tuned to hear all these interesting topics. And to discuss this and other topics today, we are honored to have esteemed speakers who are at the forefront of innovation in this field. First, we will have Markus Gandorfer, who leads the digital farming group at the Bavarian State Research Center for Agriculture in Germany. Markus will definitely share valuable insights into the latest advancements in digital farming and how they are reshaping agricultural landscapes. Next, we will be joined by Rafał Igielski, who is the co-founder of Somigro. Somigro is a pioneering company specializing in microbiological analysis for enzymatic activity. Rafał will definitely enlighten us on the crucial role of soil health in precision agriculture and how microbial analysis can optimize crop yields, something that, you know, Food for Sustainability is very familiar and fond of. And lastly, we are privileged to welcome Luís Figueroa from Space for Good, an expert in satellite technologies for monitoring biodiversity. So we'll bring again biodiversity to the table. Luís will showcase how satellite data is revolutionizing biodiversity monitoring, enabling farmers to make more informed decisions while at the same time conserving the natural ecosystems. So let's join this exciting journey. Thank you everyone for your presence here. And as you know, some house rules very quickly. These webinars are recorded. So just you can stay and you are agreeing to the recording. If not, please just keep your cameras off and we can proceed as this. Also, Rita has prepared our warm-up. We do have a Slido, which we'll use as an introduction to our topic, but also to be at the platform to serve as your questions to our speakers. So you, as always, after each speaker presentation, you can address your questions to the speakers. Rita, tell us, what have you prepared for us? How can we join you? We need to type www.slido.com. Okay. When you enter the page, there will be a hashtag box, and you can insert F for S Academy, and you are in. I can see that Luís is already typing in his mobile. Let's see, Luís, if you are up to the challenge, or if you will also be learning some new things. Okay, good. Rita, I will need your guidance now. Can we open Slido and see what's happening? So we have the first question. The first question refers to the father of precision agriculture. So Dr. Pierre Robert is referred by some as the father of precision agriculture. Do you know what was his earliest research that then named precision agriculture? Was it on soil variability? Was it on water management, seeding management, or imaginary detection? So in 1983, Dr. Roberts indeed pioneered some research, and this led to something that is quite big today. For example, the US Economic Research Service point that now almost a quarter of all US planted land, namely for winter wheat, cotton, and rice, use this type of agriculture. So we have 11 people vote. I think we have an agreement in our audience, but precision agriculture, in fact, relates to variability in the soil. So Dr. Robert was the first to research variable rate fertilizer, and this is something that is familiar. And here he acknowledged that different areas of the field have different crop yields and thus different nutrient requirements to obtain the optimum yield. So precision agriculture is definitely more related to the specific conditions in each piece of land. So soil variability. So we've learned some things. Thank you, Rita, for this. Fantastic. And we know Pierre Roberts, it's the father of precision agriculture. Now we turn to a concept that is very related, but not quite the same. That is precision farming. Do you have an idea how much this market is estimated to be worth in 2027? So this is data from Berg Insight. They are consultants, a think tank, and this was a report done in 2023. And I can tell you that in 2022, the market size was 3.1 billion, and in 2027 is expected to grow to 5.2 billion. So with compound annual growth of almost 12%. Okay, that's a very big market. That's quite a lot of potential to be grasped there. Thank you so much, Rita. Rita, this time you did more difficult questions. Okay, and this we are getting very technical. So this is kind of, and our speakers can also assist us here. Some what exactly is the meaning of precision agriculture? We hear a lot about precision agriculture, digital agriculture, precision farming. So what are we really talking about? So the first definition refers to something that first is site specific and matches the natural variability in soils, microclimates, plants, and other factors for customized location-specific inputs of seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, water, etc. The other option points to site-specific farming that uses digital tools for management, mainly towards fertilizers. Then we have the issues that relate to the farm. So is precision agriculture a technique or that relates to farming guided by detailed environmental information to minimize the use of water, agrochemicals, and labor, Or is it because it used GPS technology that involves satellites and sensors and other sensitive information to account for resource conditions in the field? Okay, let's see. So it's true that we associate a lot precision agriculture with technology, but the real definition of precision agriculture has to do with the specific site conditions that match the natural variability in the context, so in soils, in microclimates, and we test this and we understand this variability through digital technologies. Okay, so there is some difference, and just to finish and to add, and precision farming relates more to the farming as a whole and not so much to site-specific conditions from the context. So this is really interesting, Rita. So now we are more clear that precision agriculture and precision farming and digital agriculture are similar, but slightly different. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for taking part. So I now call to the floor Markus Gandorfer. Let me just quickly introduce you to Markus. So since June 2017, Markus is leading the digital farming group at the Bavarian State Research Center for Agriculture. Markus' research focused on social economic evaluation of digital and autonomous technologies in agriculture. Markus holds a degree in horticultural sciences, and his doctoral research addressed the economic and environmental evaluations of precision farming technologies. And he has received his habilitations also from Technical University of Munich in agricultural economics. Thank you, Markus. And the floor is now yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for introducing me. I hope you can see now my slides. Yes?
Everything is clear from our end. Thank you.
Because we had some problems at the beginning. Okay, so thank you very much for introducing me. My talk will be about variable rate nitrogen management, different approaches, adoption patterns, and some economic considerations. But at the beginning, I will talk a little bit more broad about adoption and more technologies than variable rate nitrogen management in order to provide a little bit the floor for also for the next speakers. So what we do in my group is that we come up every 2 years with surveys, farmer surveys, where we try to track the adoption of different digital technologies in Bavaria. So Bavaria is in Germany, and we have here quite small to medium structured agriculture, particularly in crop farming. And I guess this is quite comparable to different countries in the European Union. And what you can see here is only a very small part of our surveys that we do in every 2 years. And what you can see here is a quite long list of different digital technologies, to use this more broader term now, from automatic steering systems to different variable rate technologies. So for instance, variable rate plant protection to variable rate fertilizer management, nitrogen, but also variable rate seeding and different field robotics applications and NIR technologies, for instance, for spreading liquid manure or to determine harvest quality. And the green bars, and this is now important to understand, the green bars show the share of farmers that have purchased a specific technology. And the blue bars actually show the what they plan in the next year or next 5 years. And the data now is from 2022, so 2 years old, so it's quite recent. And as you can see, and this is often some new information for for the audience that actually the adoption of digital technologies at the farm level is quite lacking behind expectations. Also, the market is quite big and we have big expectations. So normally in the first places, there are automation technologies like automatic steering systems, but also section control on sprayers, spreaders, planters, and so on. However, if we talk about variable rate management, for instance, for nitrogen, as you can see here, it's marked in red, there is only currently an adoption rate of 5%. That's quite low, particularly if you have in mind that the first Yara N sensor, I think, was introduced into the market 20 years ago. So the big question is, what are the reasons behind it? And is this transferable to other countries? And we were also involved in some different EU projects where we did some similar surveys. And as you can see here, also from data from 2022, we did surveys in UK, Lithuania, Poland, and so on. And what you can see here are always the 5 most important technologies that were actually named in the surveys. And as you can see, there is always in the different countries, it's always about section control, it's always about farm management information systems, some software packages for farm management, auto steering, of course, but there is only once or twice variable rate management in the first 5 technologies. And this is therefore quite transferable to different countries, not only what I've shown you for Bavaria. So it's quite transferable, and the question is, what are the reasons behind the situation that we have quite successful technologies, automation technologies like automatic steering, section control, and also after 20 years, many technologies then like variable rate nitrogen management that is hardly to find on the farms, at least in small to medium structured agricultural areas. And therefore, we also ask for barriers and drivers of digitalization. And as you can see here on this slide, of course, the main drivers of digital to adopt the digital technology at the farm level is, of course, that the technology should actually improve the quality of work. It should make something, a specific task, more simple, of course. It should be reliable, of course. It should be user-friendly. There shouldn't be any compatibility issues. And showstoppers, of course, like always, are high initial investment costs or high running costs. And if you think now of site-specific nitrogen management or variable rate nitrogen management, we have to have in mind that a quite simple process, actually, uniform nitrogen management, will be much more complex if you opt for variable rate nitrogen management. So it's much more simple, of course, to apply a uniform rate than using more advanced technologies, more complex models, and to do it in a site-specific or variable rate way. And therefore, we have to additionally consider that nitrogen has some high economic and ecological relevance in the system. So, of course, nitrogen has a strong impact on crop yield and quality. We always say that it's the engine of plant protection, actually. But nitrogen also has a lot of negative environmental aspects, negative external effects. So, for instance, mineral nitrogen fertilizer is quite energy intensive if you want to produce it, of course. There are greenhouse gas emissions, nitrous oxide emissions if you apply nitrogen on the field. And there is also this problem of nitrogen leaching into the groundwater. So there are many reasons to really take care of nitrogen management. And efficient use of nitrogen is, of course, of paramount importance. Therefore, correctly applied variable rate fertilization can improve efficiency. And therefore, we take care for nitrogen, variable rate nitrogen management, and we want to improve also adoption rates, but this is quite hard. And the reason is actually that it looks quite simple. For instance, here you have a picture of a field with, of course, a high obvious heterogeneity in the crop. There are the brown areas where you have a lack of water in this year. And there are green areas where you have the high yielding areas. And of course, if you look at such a situation, it makes sense to not to apply nitrogen in a uniform way, but to account for this obviously obvious soil heterogeneity in the situation. Yeah, what are the effects now of variable rate nitrogen fertilization? Here's an illustration that actually relies a little bit on the picture before. And I want to explain the effects with net return functions in euros per hectare as a function of nitrogen fertilizing kilograms per hectare. And the green line shows the net return function in the high yielding green zones, if you remember the picture before, and the brown function here shows the net return function in the low yielding zone. And normally, of course, we apply nitrogen in a uniform rate. And now the idea of variable rate nitrogen management is to use more information, for instance, from satellite data, from combine harvesters or other sensors, and to identify the site-specific economic optimum nitrogen rates. Depending on the uniform rate, of course, what farmers' best practice is, we end up in a situation that it often makes sense to apply in the high-yielding zones more nitrogen, and in the low-yielding zones less nitrogen compared to the uniform rate that is normally applied. From an environmental point of view, particularly the low-yielding zones are of particular importance, because reducing nitrogen rates in the low-yielding zones reduces the risk of nitrogen leaching into groundwater, which is a quite big challenge here, for instance, in high-intensive agriculture, like we find in many regions in Bavaria. However, we can also see that these net return functions are quite flat in the area of the economic optimum, which means that the marginal benefits or the benefits from going from a uniform rate to the economic optimum site-specific rates makes almost no difference actually in the economics. However, we have environmental benefits, particularly in the low-yielding zones. And explaining this a little bit, explains also the low adoption rates currently at the farm level. So we are talking here of a technology that is quite complex, that has environmental benefits, but the economics is quite limited. And this conclusion can be also found in quite a lot of publications. How can you do now site-specific nitrogen management? We distinguish different approaches. So we have online approaches, we have mapping approaches, and combined approaches. Online approach means that you have, for instance, sensor technology mounted on the tractor cabin. where you measure during your field operations, or where you spread actually the nitrogen. So you measure and you directly calculate different nitrogen rates at a specific place in the field. Such approaches are called online approaches. Mapping approaches use historical information, for instance, from yield maps from combine harvesters, but also from average biomass maps produced from satellite data from the last 4 or 5 years. So there are many companies around that offer such services. And from the biomass maps, you can then actually produce prescription maps for nitrogen management. The combined approaches use different informations at the same time. So, for instance, from a sensor mounted on the tractor, in combination with an average historical biomass map produced, for instance, from satellite data. The different approaches are quite different also in terms of the cost. So, for instance, on the German market, such sensor systems on the tractor cabin or mounted on the tractor are quite costly. So we are talking about investment costs of 20 to 30,000 euros. Pure mapping approaches are normally cheaper. So for instance, if you rely simply on a biomass map, on an average historical biomass map, you can buy it from different companies, service providers for 5 to 10 euros per hectare, for instance, depending on a price model. And of course, combined approaches are more complex and normally also more expensive. Yeah, we have done a lot of field trials to compare different market available technologies at our place. I will only have the time to show you one experiment, but this is quite transferable. To explain a little bit the situation when it comes to the evaluation of different technologies. And what you can see here is the nitrogen balance. So in kilogram nitrogen per hectare. So this is actually the nitrogen that was not used by the plants. A very important indicator when it comes to the environmental evaluation of different nitrogen management approaches, because the nitrogen balance should be actually around 0, actually, in order to make sure that there is not too much high nitrogen surplus in the environment. And DSN, for instance, here is an abbreviation for nitrogen management system, a uniform nitrogen management system that is used here by our official extension services. And here we have different service providers for variable rate nitrogen management approaches, mainly based, so the first 4 ones on satellite data. And here's the green seeker. This is a sensor approach, for instance. And on this slide, you can see the results for the high yielding zone and the low yielding zone. And what you can see compared to uniform management, there are many systems on the market that can help you to reduce the nitrogen balance in the high yield zone, but also in the low yield zone. But it depends quite on the system. So there is no one single system that stands for all. So for instance, here you can also end up with a higher nitrogen balance compared to uniform management. But there are also systems, for instance, here the green seeker, that results in a quite low nitrogen balance. So it depends on the different systems. That's a very important message here. When we look at the economics, you can see here the profit in euros per hectare in the high yield zone and low yield zone from the different systems. Profit means here only a revenue minus nitrogen cost. So we do not consider here the technology cost, so the additional cost of variable rate management. But what you can see here, and it quite fits to the slide before where I explained the response functions, the flat response functions. So there is no big difference actually between the different systems. Yeah, and this is actually the situation that we are currently faced with. If you opt for site-specific nitrogen management, you will most probably do something good for the environment. However, a simple process, uniform management, becomes more complex with site-specific nitrogen management, and the economics is in most cases quite limited. However, I'm working for the Bavarian State Research Center for Agriculture, and of course our idea is to push such technologies that can help to make farming more sustainable, also in environmental terms. Our big challenge now is to push the development forward and to foster adoption. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Markus. Thank you for such an enlightening overview of technology and precision agriculture. It was really, really interesting. You also highlighted some of the trade-offs and the challenges to adoption, always trying to balance the economic versus the environmental cost. That's something that we touch upon in several topics. I think the environmental cost is really still too low and not really attributed to the payer. So the challenge is definitely quite big. So it's still puzzling. So many technologies, so many great things, and the adoption rate it's fairly low. So what are we doing wrong that we don't have more prevalent usage of technology? Or what developments are still needed so that farmers are more easily convinced to adopt?
Yes, I think so. So there are different options now how we can proceed. So I think regarding the companies, we need more user friendliness. We need to reduce the complexity of the technologies. That's most probably one of the main points. From the official side, we have quite good experience now with some, let's say, subsidy programs to push adoption. And of course, as long as the negative environmental effects are not actually monetized at the farm level, there is actually no there is no benefit of adopting, of course. So there are different options now to foster adoption.
Yeah, and I would say that those problems are probably stronger or more relevant if we look to most of the farming landscape here in Europe, that the smallholder system persists, and these are the ones that are more in need of economic benefits. That precision agriculture can assist, but at the same time, the land size probably make it more difficult to introduce technology, the costs, and I would say that the ability and the professional support to these smallholders is more challenging. At the Bavarian Institute, are you doing some leading programs to incentivize? Are you testing, I don't know, applications, mobile phones, running courses, I don't know, any initiative that could be used as inspiration?
So what we do is that we do a lot of on-farm research trials where we actually compare market available technologies in order to help farmers identify the technologies that fit to their specific needs. That's one point. And we also try to provide a lot of, let's say, not trainings actually. So train the trainers, of course. We try to attract the extension people because extension is of course also key. So you have to train the extension specialists in the different technologies in order to spread the technologies at the farm level. So these are our core activities currently.
And I would just add that probably we need to get more involved also with the university curriculums and try to push this, fancy names as data management and GIS systems, so that they all become more familiar with technology and more comfortable. Markus, we have a question here on Slido. So you have mentioned that nitrogen has many negative effects for agriculture. Do you have similar information, but instead of nitrogen, for example, biology to the soil, so adding like compost in liquid form? Or your trials have mainly been
we currently work mainly on mineral nitrogen fertilization when it comes to variable rate management. So in terms of manure management, we are currently not working on manure management actually when it comes to site specific management. And yeah, there is, for instance, an IR technology to improve manure management, of course, to reduce here the negative environmental effects of over application. However, many farmers here in our situation have the problem that manure is, of course, not scarce. So you actually have to get rid of the manure. It's a totally different situation compared to mineral nitrogen fertilizers. Mineral nitrogen fertilizer is expensive, and therefore farmers have, of course, an incentive to use it in a very efficient way. In terms of manure, we often have the situation that it's not scarce, so therefore there's not such a big focus on it.
Okay. Yes, this is probably where all the precision agriculture has started, and that's why more research is going to this this starting point. That's really probably one of the most burning needs of farmers. Markus, thank you so much. We'll now move to Luís. I invite you to stay here with us until the end, Luís. I invite you to jump to the floor. So Luís is Mexican, and he has the background in environmental engineering and natural resource management. He has developed expertise in quantifying above the ground biomass and conducting biodiversity assessments with remote sensing. Beyond project management, Luís' skills as a remote sensing biodiversity lead include developing and implementing algorithms to support conservation management efforts, and also analyzing and interpreting remote sensing data for biodiversity initiatives, and also building strong partnerships with stakeholders in remote sensing and conservation. Luís, it's also a pleasure. Let's see how remote sensing links with biodiversity and learn a little bit more about the world of precision agriculture.
Thank you so much, Claudia and Anna, Rita. I also see Margarita here. Nice to see you again. I'll just share my screen and then please just confirm that you're actually looking at the presentation. Right now it's not in presentation mode,
Yes, but
I'll get to that in a second. And I like to do the
perfect.
pointer just to have this, and I'll have my cheat sheet on the side if I can't. Yeah, show presenter view. So now you're still seeing
Yes,
the
all good
presentation, right?
from this end. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. It's nice to see from Markus' presentation that I was looking at the numbers, and nice to see that maps are being used and implemented at a good rate in different countries. And yeah, thanks again for inviting me to speak today. Yeah, I think most of the work that I do as a remote sensing scientist, analyst, specifically now with biodiversity is a lot of education, and I would like to transmit some of that today. And just to start off, I know I already got introduced, but I'll just not to say too much about myself, but to tell a story of how I got to where I am at the moment. So yeah, I'm from Mexico, from the north, and that's where I did my initial studies. And basically, yeah, the way I started was doing forest inventories, which at the time I didn't know exactly that how related this was to biodiversity. But later on in life, I grew really passionate about doing forest inventories. And the great thing about this experience in Mexico was that I had the opportunity to work with forest rangers, which this was their side job, right? This was not what they were working on for real. What they would work on for real was they were doing agriculture, right? They were farmers. So they understood the value that the forest provided them with ecosystem services. I've only read about them in my studies, but I really didn't understand. But they had a really clear understanding of what the forest was giving to them, right? So I was doing this forest inventories, and for a really long time I didn't have a social life because I was all weekends out in the forest, which is nice. I love the forest, don't get me wrong. But then again, like the question of how can we do this more efficiently started popping in my mind, and I was already the maps guy in my previous work in Mexico. So the natural course was to explore more Earth observation, right? That was my answer to this problem. And I started focusing more on above ground biomass, tree species detection, of course, with remote sensing, specifically with UAVs and satellites. And over the last years, I've been pushed more towards doing work with biodiversity, right? Here I'm just taking a GNSS pole station and taking a GPS position just for some UAV flights that we're doing. Not trying to sell the company here, but I think it is part of who I am at the moment. So I work at Space for Good, and what really brought me to Space for Good is the for good part of the company, which of course for me was really important to do impactful work for the people on the ground, for this forest rangers that I've known and that I met, and keeping that interaction with farmers and with forest rangers, and for providing solutions to them. So what I do right now is provide geospatial solutions for social and environmental impact. We of course started off in the European Space Agency Business Incubation Center in 2017, and now we're around 20 team members, right? Our core pillars are, of course, something that also drew me to Space for Good, which is agriculture, forestry, conservation, and biodiversity. And just to showcase a tiny bit of some nice little imagery is some forest fires. Well, not very nice, but very a good example of what we can do with open data from Copernicus, right? Which is again, in some cases, even send live alerts to people on the ground so that they can take meaningful action. Now, turning the conversation more to my side, or to my favorite topic at the moment is biodiversity, which is, you see it on LinkedIn every day, and they spam you every time with how can we measure biodiversity. Now, I like to start with this two images on finding the difference, right? If I were to ask which one of these images hosts more biodiversity, I think it doesn't take an expert on ecology to say that maybe the image on the left hosts more biodiversity than the image on the right. Both of those pictures are from Indonesia. The one was taken by myself on an excursion that we did back in 2022 to do some tree species identification. The other one is just a stock photo, but it's the same place in Borneo, right? And it's a palm oil plantation. For those who have seen this landscapes from the airplane, it's just astonishing as to how much land is occupied by palm oil. Now, at Space for Good, we don't try to look at things as black or white, or at least I don't like to do that. We try to do for systems that are in the middle on agroforestry or promote ways of increasing biodiversity in agricultural systems. But if we were to look at these two images, of course, on the left side, we start seeing taller trees and smaller trees. Even with our naked eye, we can see different shades of green. Some are a bit more yellow, some are a bit more green. While on the other image, we see just one height and one shade of green, right? So the practices that are employed in specific landscapes dictates the pressure that we put on biodiversity. Now, the advantage that we have with remote sensing is that we can actually start to measure what I already mentioned in the past about tall trees and low trees and different shades of green. The way we can do that is by measuring composition of the landscape and the ecosystem structure, right? I think for me, it's really important to also say that I think we've been a bit spoiled with the recent carbon market, in which we generate maps that showcase high and low biodiversity for carbon, but for biodiversity it's a bit more complicated, because if we were to make an above ground biomass, maybe not for this landscape, this is too extreme, but in certain scenarios where a secondary forest, tropical rainforest, if we do an AGB above ground biomass map, we could see that maybe the biomass is even comparable to a landscape like this, but we know from knowledge, from just looking at the images, that some landscapes host more biodiversity than others. So just having one type of information, in this case, the example is just having above ground biomass as a proxy for biodiversity, is not enough. We need to get more information as to what's happening in the landscape. So how exactly do we measure biodiversity metrics or attributes of the landscape that are related to biodiversity? And I'm not going to give a lecture on each and every type of platform. That would take me another webinar. But we are blessed and cursed with having so many types of sensors, multispectral, which again, we saw shades of green, but in multispectral information, we can see them in different colors, actually. In LiDAR, we can see the structure of the canopy. Radar, we can see the backscatter of different types of soils even. Hyperspectral is just multispectral on steroids, right? We can see so much more colors and things that are way beyond our eyes. And of course, we have multiple platforms that give even a very detailed image of the landscape that we want, right? So we have satellites, planes, and drones. So we start talking about not only the spatial scale, but also the blessing of having remote sensing data and certain constellations like Copernicus and Landsat, is that we can also look into the past. That feels almost like a superpower, right? Of being able to look into the past and how was a landscape performing before a policy was implemented, right? Now, again, I said that this was also a curse because we just have so much information. We have so many different sensors on so many different platforms, but what exactly it is that we measure. For me, I take this example, this paper that actually was an inspiration for one of the work that we've been doing with Food for Sustainability. I'll get to that in the end. But this paper basically tries to do a priority list of remote sensing products that are relevant for biodiversity, right? And the starting point is the essential biodiversity variables, or what we call the EBV. And they have different classes that go from genetic information all the way to ecosystem function. So we go from like the very tiny aspect of life all the way to the entire function of an ecosystem. If we were to take an example of each class, or what we call a candidate, we would have, just one tiny example of species population, for example, would be species distribution. Now, how do we translate this to our remote sensing product? Well, we would have an example of species distribution, which is attributed to species population, would be a tropical tree species distribution, or even in the context of agriculture, to classify different types of crops, or identify the bushes or wildflowers in a patch of agricultural land. But again, we're not completely lost when it comes to remote sensing and what to measure. The idea here is to identify which are more important, and to attribute it to something that we see on the ground, and that's where in situ measurements come into play. Now, just continuing with this scientific paper, of course, an expert group reviewed all this list of remote sensing products and rated them by the relevance, visibility, accuracy, maturity. And of course, I invite you to cite to read this paper, and you can actually get a list of which biodiversity products are most relevant, right? Now, to proceed with this is, okay, we know how to measure it, we know what to measure, but how exactly does this look in practice? For me, it's really important to showcase that, at least personally, and also in Space for Good, we're really driven by what we call like the North Stars, or just like our inspirations for the work that we do. And in this case, I like to present two papers and then a project that we're actually doing. So how does this look in practice? In this case, the authors took just simple Sentinel-2 satellite data to assess the impact of land use intensity on biodiversity. So we have conventional farming types and organic farming types. And we choose, or in the paper, they chose crop productivity that is measured by satellite data. And believe it or not, it's just a really common vegetation index. It's not something out of this world, which is something that I would like to highlight too, that it's not reinventing the wheel. It's vegetation indices that we've been using in remote sensing for a long while, and attributed to biodiversity indicators, which are measured on the ground, right? This biodiversity indicators, in the instance of this paper, are abundance, species richness of bumblebees and butterflies, and richness of vascular plants, right? So just measuring species richness on very typical biodiversity indicators, relating them to crop productivity obtained through satellite data. And of course, we're kind of stating what we already knew from a while now, which is that there is a relationship between increasing land use intensity and decreasing field biodiversity, unfortunately. So the fact that we can do this and replicate this, of course, having good data coming in from in situ, the fact that we can do this with simple satellite data and with simple measurements from the ground, that's just something to highlight and to take forward. Another more advanced way of looking at biodiversity in a landscape that's close to very close to agricultural systems is combining environmental DNA with remote sensing to map fish species distribution. I would like to challenge this paper a bit at the end, and I'll get to that. But for now, the main takeaway is this body of water. They took environmental DNA, which for those who don't know is just a soil sample or a water sample, and through metabarcoding, we reach to the presence or absence of different species of fish in this case, or even mammals or insects or microorganisms. By also looking at very simple ecological variables derived from satellite data, they were able to approximate fish species distributions. Again, we're talking about canopy height, which is weirdly enough taken as a variable that can be correlated to fish species distribution. In the case of canopy height, it talks about if there's forest, which is a higher canopy height, or if it's agricultural land, which mostly is close to zero, right? But they also took some other ecological variables as water surface temperature, just to see how the suitability of fish species changes along the river, right? So again, very simple ecological variables combined with state-of-the-art ways of measuring biodiversity. What I would like to challenge from this paper, maybe not challenge, but it's not a conclusion that they were drawing, is how fish species populations are performing next to more intensely crop production along the river, right? Because this is a river that's, again, really closely related to agricultural fields. So how does that impact fish species population? That is just maybe a step further and even food for thought for later. And of course, I couldn't leave this presentation without talking about biomonitor for CAP. I was just recently in Lisbon, where we had the second annual meeting of the consortium partners, in which 2 of those 23 partners is Food for Sustainability, and another partner is us, Space for Good. We're spread across 10 European countries, and our objective is to design advanced biodiversity monitoring systems in agricultural fields. So we have systems in the fields. We were lucky enough to go to the ones in Lisbon, or close to Lisbon. And our goal is, again, to combine very classical biodiversity indicators with new technological approaches, UAV data, satellite data, and hopefully provide farmers and the public general, the general public, just knowledge and methods to assess biodiversity. Our role in this is, of course, the remote sensing aspect, or the satellite remote sensing aspect, in which I hope I can play this video, in which we, of course, locate where we're taking sample data, and of course, generate remote sensing data so that we can reach the same conclusions from the papers that we're inspired in, right? Which correlations can we find from remote sensing data? Which devices or which metrics function the best with the remote sensing data coming from eDNA, soil samples, bioacoustics, and all of this, right? So for us, it's really important to reach a really efficient way of doing biodiversity monitoring. With that, I would like to thank you again, Claudia, Anna, for inviting, and yeah, please do ask questions if there's anything.
It was a pleasure. Great to hear. It's a very interesting presentation, a very interesting perspective also from precision agriculture and biodiversity monitoring, really fitting some of the topics that we've discussed in the previous webinar, which is just had addressed this tools in such details. And Luís, you mentioned that in the early stages of your career, you spent the weekends in the forests. I think I can guess who pressed you to start using sensors and satellite. So you spend the weekends at home, right? But
Yeah,
Luís, two very interesting points, and I think this ties very well with what Markus just presents. So we have plenty of tools. This is really, really confusing a lot of things. So part of the work that you're developing, you are already mapping different systems and which context they are more relevant. Something that Markus also very clearly showed. I think this is also a good starting point for adoption, so people know where to go exactly. And throughout your presentation, I think the focus was really on an environmental impact and social impact, to clearly point out. At the same time, Markus also mentioned that one of the reasons for the most challenge to adoption is because the environment impact is higher, but it's not so valuable. So my question is, who are Space for Good clients? Okay, who can afford and is so interesting in making sure that these tools are developed, and how can we use these insights at the farm level that is actually usable for a farmer?
Yeah, definitely. So to answer that question, first go maybe not to a client, but for us it's really important to reach a mature level of development for our products that we want to offer. And going back again to buy more for gap and this type of consortiums and types of relations that we can form with companies like yours, where there's this knowledge transfer, because we're really aware that we cannot do this alone, simply just by the simple fact that we don't have the capacity to do the in situ measurements, right? So for us, the clients that come forward to us, actually just had a call with a client today where they did have the capability of providing historical data from the in situ of farmers, and provide, of course, a type of metric that they've been measuring for us to support their decision making, right? So for us, it's really important two things like this: strategic partnerships with through Horizon Europe or different consortiums, but also partners that are big enough and that have a good hold of farmers in a specific country, and that have a good control over the measurements that are being done on the ground. Of course, we don't expect just a local farmer to come to us. Mostly, we work best when we just have a collection of data to train our models.
Okay, so more policy oriented and informing new policies, more at the, I think also your map with the wildfires, that was very clear, how useful that can be also for more at an institutional level. But with technology, I believe that most of us remember the old mobile phones. This is also definitely a path that we need to walk along. I need to go to the chat now. We have a couple of questions. I think you touched on this question, but let me just phrase them. What are some of the latest challenge with this technology, which in fact you address several technologies, and how close are we to solve them?
Yeah.
So is this technology an issue?
So I guess for us from the remote sensing side, when we look at satellite remote sensing, we're very fortunate that we have the European Space Agency or NASA already with satellites. It's very mature, the type of data that we can get from this. When it comes to higher resolution information, I think that's where we start to talk about more complications, as for example, the use of drones and LiDAR. But for now, what we strive for is to use open source data for sure, and to make it as scalable as possible. And that for sure in itself is a great challenge, right? Because you don't have maybe the best spatial resolution. You have really big pixels that maybe doesn't work for really smallholder farmers. So that's, just one of the challenges. But as anything in technology, we're seeing great advancements on LiDAR. There's a new satellite coming out this year that's supposed to map out biomass already. And we see new sensors from DJI on drones to measure LiDAR information, which are just insanely cheap for what they are, right? So yeah, I think we're just getting there to getting more and more accessible data.
Luís, the second question also probes you a little bit further. I know that you have mentioned that consortiums are important, okay, so tapping into different types of expertise. But how are these concerns and obstacles being addressed apart from entering consortiums? What sort of approaches do you take?
Yeah, in this case, we like to do strategic partnerships and also, of course, business with clients that can, of course, provide in situ measurements. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have the capacity to do the in situ measurements ourselves, so we rely heavily on what the partnerships and the business that we develop can provide, right, in terms of in situ measurements, whether that be I know we've spoken with companies that can provide bioacoustic data or eDNA or soil sampling. So of course that in itself is a challenge. And again, going back to BioTreX app that's like the safe haven where we can explore this type of what is the best combination of satellite remote sensing and hopefully find which is the best performing in situ measurement that we can get to get the best biodiversity monitoring, right? So that we can later ask the market, this is what we need. This is the best way to go forward.
Okay, so but do you link it to the market or do you link it to policymakers?
I link it more to the market because that's it's more about who has the money to invest in doing biodiversity monitoring. I think right now, well, at least in the policy side, we're starting to see a shift of requiring companies to request more and more biodiversity data. But then again, at the moment, it's the ones that can pay for this types of analysis.
Okay, so it's a little share of those 5.2 billion euros that are sitting on the table. Okay, definitely. Just one final line, Luís, about conservation strategies. And how are you using this approach towards conservation strategies?
Yeah, I think something that we're doing at the moment that is insanely related to biodiversity and is to help in conservation strategies and management for sure is, for example, we have one of our largest projects plural is to detect illegal logging or to assess wildfires, right? Or create maps that detect risk assessment. That's more in other types of landscapes, right? But in a way, we're promoting the conservation of an ecosystem where we're alerting people on the ground of what's happening in certain types of landscapes. And of course, the idea is to, because it's a huge market when we talk about the agricultural sector, and how do we prove that by having agroforestry systems or things as simple as flower patches near or in agricultural fields can promote biodiversity, right? So that's something that can be done with remote sensing at a larger scale instead of just on a plot by plot basis.
Let's definitely wait for some of the results, namely BioMonitor for CAP. Very interesting, Luís. Thank you so much. Rafał, are you ready? So Rafał, while we prepare your presentation, let me tell you that Rafał is a scientist and a manager with a broad experience across academia, nonprofits, and business sector. Rafał is a global strategy and business development manager at Arada Corporation. He drives the European expansion of BIOTREX microbial soil evaluation technology. He co-founded Somigro, leading in soil microbiological analysis in the agro sector innovation from 2019 to 2024. His work in International Institute of Molecular and Cell Biology in Warsaw focus on new business strategies and service sale channels. Also, to tell you that Rafał is an alumnus of the Top 500 Innovators Program, trained in Cambridge and Oxford. He held this prestigious position in the Innovation Forum and at the Top 500 Innovation Association. Rafał, it's a pleasure to have you here. Let's hear about your enzymatical microbial analysis. I think Food for Sustainability is jumping on the chair, really keen to hear your insights. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for the invitation and introduction. I'm so happy that Markus has started and then Luís continued that topics, because I believe I have something common I'd like to share with you. So I will try to tell you more about perspective from the soil and soil microbiology, but how to combine that with biodiversity and precision farming approaches. I'd like to start from the question why we are doing that. Why we are trying to do precision farming? Why we are trying to introduce all those technologies? The answer is quite simple. We need optimization. So farming is really demanding business. We have the pressure of increased costs. Weather, we don't know. It's going to be really hot and dry, or floods, disease pressure, regulations. We have many new regulations currently, and of course market demands. Everything is still changing, and the farm as a business, there is the demand how to steer and how to optimize there. In general, I would say, why precision farming? So we need a help. We need a help how to tackle all those things and requirements, especially when the demand of increasing production, of reduction of environmental impact as well. And precision farming, we hope, leads to higher yields, to lower costs, and minimize environmental negative effects. However, that was before described that precision farming is mostly related to the soil. What exactly is in that location? But thanks to satellite imagery, drone agriculture machinery, variable light technologies, sensors, and all data management, we are going to improve the old practices. But I'd like to emphasize one fact: soil health, and that's what is currently happening in European Union, because we have upcoming soil health and resilience law, and soil should be properly managed. I mean, soil health. And probably that is not something new for all of you, that soil parameters are composed of physical parameters, chemical parameters, as well biological parameters. We can evaluate a lot of parameters from satellite mapping, so NDVI maps. Of course, if we can take soil samples, what is recommended always, not only to rely on maps and sensors, but also dig in soil. We need to combine all those factors, including biological factors. Previously, seminars cover aspects of complexity of soil ecosystems and soil biodiversity, and I'd like to simplify that somehow, because I found out there's a lot of talks that is complex, biodiversity is complex, how we can get all those data, all those things. So we are looking for simplification. So let's take soil as the microbial engine. So that is indeed microbial engine, which could provide more nutrients, better uptake, better humidification, upgrade soil structure and water retention. But like all engines, we need to fuel that properly. That really depends on the practices which are on the field, techniques which are used, but also depends on fertilizers which are applied. That could be through variable rates to manage that application. But active soil microbes are crucial, and that is part of biodiverse and fertile soil. So let's keep that in mind. Soil microbes is soil engine. So how that impact in general quality of soil and production on the farm. So let's imagine the low biodiversity. So we can just couple really tiny, not super special microbes. We don't have a lot living organisms in soil. So what we could expect from those soils? Not so much. So the problem is how to increase those processes through increase of the biodiversity. Of course, we are looking for the strong resilience, but less fertilizers, good nutrition after better water retention, more soil organic carbon. And I also like what Luís said, there is a lot of talks about carbon credits and accumulation of soil organic carbon, but we totally forget about biodiversity. The goal, yes, of course, that is accumulation of carbon dioxide in soil, so more humus in soil. But don't forget about biodiversity in soil. That is crucial topic. And now I'd like to tell you more about BIOTREX. What is BIOTREX? Actually, BIOTREX, that is technology which come to Europe from Japan. You can imagine that roughly 20 years ago, Professor Yokoyama, he invented that in Japan. That was super new because those days no one was interested in soil microbiology, and over those years that technology became available in Japan. It's well recognized. More than 20,000 soil samples were analyzed. And that is based on technology which come from a company Biolog. You can see the plates, and that is a different method if compared to eDNA, because that is CLPP, community level physiological profiling. So that is approach to profile physiological processes which are performed by microbiome. And there is plenty of publications used for evaluation of practices, restoration of soil environment, and those data accumulating all the time. But I'd like to start with the simplicity and the steps. What is how to start with evaluation of soil microbiome? We decided to use NDVI maps, I mean historical maps, to evaluate productivity zones. because of availability, that makes this type of technologies precise. Because in general, we are really interested in the quality of zones and how that could impact the quality and fertility and processes on the whole field, but we don't want to spend too much, because that is one of the barriers. One of barriers is, of course, complexity, but also the approach and cost of the method. And we are following the sampling procedures which are already established. If that is the special pattern of soil sampling, yes, we can follow that. If there is a special type of cultivation, if there is a special depth, we evaluated that because, yes, that is true, that microbiomes and biodiversity changes. That could be different even though in one place on the field, and 50 meters in other location, that changes. That also changes over the time period because microbiome, that is the living organism. So we can expect changes, but we also need to know what we are trying to evaluate and what we are trying to compare. And that is the simple first optimization we should take care. Then when we have soil sample, which comes to us, we are starting the process. As Claudia said, that is the metabolic approach. So that rely on activity of microbes and enzymatic activities and performance. In the soil, we are calling that food for microbes. As you can assume, microbes like different type of foods, different type of substrates, and that is what we call a metabolic fingerprint. That metabolic fingerprint means different ecosystems behave differently in terms of the same group of substrates. We have 31 substrates, and after 48 hours, we can see the pattern. Which microbes exist, which not, and we are producing the very simple report. When you can find the universal range of microbial performance and biodiversity. You can find here photographs of plates, which reflect the end products of that 48-hour metabolism of different microbiomes. And as you probably assume, the worst one is from the really highly degraded soils. And we tested those soils in many programs. We currently evaluating soils. But the perfect one, I mean, when there is the organic farm or farm which is after a long process of regeneration, we can see dramatic improvement. So that means more microbial activity, more microbial biodiversity, and more processes which are active in soil. And actually, that is what we are looking for, but that is not the end, but we need recommendations. And among recommendations, that could be cover crops, biostimulants, organic fertilizers, bacterial products, or some improvements in practices we have on field. But all fields are different and soil is different, and we are trying to find the best approach to achieve that. So I'd like to present you just couple of case studies, and I'd like to emphasize a couple of things we can expect. The one is related to comparison we did between conservational and conventional farms. And I'd like to emphasize that it's not always true that all conventional soils are really highly degraded, and some conservational always superior ones. That is the process. So good soils could be degraded, and the conservational approaches are to restore the quality. But we found out through the experiments that the cumulative number of tests we did, conservational practices are favorable for soil microbial performance as well biodiversity. However, I'd like you to look more closely on the map. So I'm not going to tell that NDVI maps are not good, but that is not the only approach we should use, because we can see green zones, which means there is good productivity, but we don't know if that productivity depends on the good quality of microbiome, biodiversity, or maybe fertilization, or that depends on chemical properties of soil. But in general, we found out that all regenerative practices are favorable for restoration of microbiome. But that is something what is supportive. Of course, conventional this time we found out that those fields were really in poor condition in terms of microbial performance and biodiversity. We also doing a lot of experiments. This one experiment was performed on the soils in Poland. We compared soils from conventional test fields and fields with practices, regenerative practices, and we found out that for the same crops we can see increased and better microbial performance as well biodiversity. That is also interesting because lupin, fabace, even though in conventional soils tend to increase the overall microbiological performance and biodiversity, but it is known that fabace are very popular for regenerative practices and restoration. However, as you can see, that is quite simple to evaluate the progress. I'd like to also point to Markus and question about application of variable rate technologies, not only to nitrogen fertilization, but also biological products. And of course, especially for biological products, which are quite expensive, this type of approach could be helpful, because soil microbiome, soil chemical parameters, that is not equal. However, soil microbiome is a little bit, I would say, stable in terms of comparison between different zones. However, farmers also are looking for solution they should use or not some products. So we are doing also such tests to let farmers evaluate some products, and you can see the field we evaluated by NDVI map. We did chemical analysis, but also BIOTREX analysis, and we found out there is a lot to improve on this field. However, farmer was more convinced about NDVI map and decided to apply product only on the part of the field. For this year, we found out farmer was really happy with yield. Product worked very well, and definitively there is a lot room for improvements in terms of biodiversity and activity of microbes. And we also did a lot of tests. Here is a test of products we tested for one of the companies, and for us that was one of the best tests we had, because we found out this product was really superior in terms of the recovery of microbiome. As I mentioned to you, we are not trying to point to biostimulants, bioproducts. We are trying to promote compost, if that is possible, to apply compost as well, manure, crop rotation, cover crops, for everything what is favorable for microbiome. And especially soil biodiversity restoration, and those practices, that is enormous number of different practices in different regions around the world, and we are trying to help farmers and organizations to know more about soil and how to apply practice and technologies to make microbiome and biodiversity better. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Rafał. Very, very interesting. You know that we are quite fond of soil and soil microbiology, so we here at Food for Sustainability follow this topic with great interest. Short on time, and I apologize. Probably my employer is going to give me a watch as to keep track of time. It's it goes so fast. But I have one question for you, Rafał, and then one question for the three of you. So does BIOTREX give you the analysis, any analysis between aerobic and anaerobic bacteria?
Mm-hmm.
And I can see someone smiling with this question. So,
mm-hmm. Yes. Like always, we depend on technologies which are on the market, and we are really happy that Biolog company is developing, and with their new machine that is possible also to analyze anaerobic bacteria. However, for this test, we extracting the whole community, but that community is like it is. We are not discriminating aerobic, anaerobic bacteria, nor bacteria or fungi. We are just treating that as the whole ecosystem, and we are evaluating how that ecosystem performs.
Right. So, just another very quickly, Rafał, how do you address the fact that some microorganisms might have several functions? This does not necessarily mean higher biodiversity.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is really interesting topic. A couple of days ago, I read a publication, and that is also one what is related to talks I had with my colleague. We is very close in soil microbiome. So that is the group of microorganisms which are known to perform most of crucial functions. And that is true that if soil ecosystem trying to adapt to very adverse conditions, so we can expect lower biodiversity, but not exactly as low as you could think looking at the plate. But we found out that is really strong representation, and we are also doing evaluation using biodiversity tests, and we are evaluating additional tests. And of course, that happens that we can Swiss knife bacteria, but that is not possible to have all functions in that level of activity and number of bacteria in soil. Because we tested different soils, we tested strains, we added those strains to sterilize soil. We tested multibacteria products, we tested compost, we did a lot. Please believe me, that is not possible to fool that technology and see Swiss knife bacteria in environment which is not biodiverse. Not possible, and especially because that is not possible to survive those microbes for the long time period. And we can see that as a monitoring process, as decreasing process of disappearing activities and functionalities from our test.
Okay, that's where the DNA sequencing might help and assist part of this analysis. This is probably some collaboration we'll look forward in the future. So one final question. I know that we are run past our time, but imagine I'm a farmer. I just popped into this webinar. I've just heard 3 great presentations. I have some awareness of environmental problems, but I'm really here to run a business. How would you convince me that I should go for your technology? So what is your unique selling point to convince farmers that, you know, you are the way to go? Oh, this was a tricky one. Come on,
who is
Rafał.
going to start? Okay, I'm the first one. Okay, yes, that is the challenging point. But I would say you don't have to keep your fingers crossed that your regenerative practices works. You can see that. You can see because you can test your soil, improve through regenerative practices and proper products, and get better yield and keep more money in the pocket. So that is also not only for us, but for you and for environment as well.
Okay, great. And Luís, why should I bet my money on satellite monitoring for biodiversity?
I think the main takeaway, proven again by research and our own work, is we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We've been already doing several analysis with proven vegetation indices and things that we know that are highly correlated to the environment. So we just need to strengthen those relationships so we can start a monitoring process. So yeah, that would be also just my invitation to create this smart partnerships to keep a lookout more on biodiversity.
Okay, good. Partnerships. Markus, why should I go to the Bavarian Research Center and ask for a collaboration?
Yeah, so actually we do not sell any technologies, so so that's not our point. But my recommendation is actually for farmers to be informed, to keep on track with the different technologies. Also, some of them are currently not profitable, maybe at the farm level. However, waiting too long can cause serious costs in the future. So therefore, yeah, carefully listen to the market, of course, and to the extension services and to the research institutions, because otherwise you might face some serious problems in the future if you are hesitating too long when it comes to the adoption of digital agriculture technologies.
Okay, and definitely do your homework before jumping on a single technology. Well, I think we're running out of time. I have to say it was a pleasure to be here, to hear more about your work. Thank you so much. We will end here. We'll be back next week. We'll delving into satellite and sensors with some use case of technologies that apply this kind of precision agriculture and digital technologies in the field. So I hope to see you next Thursday at the same time. And in the meanwhile, enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy your weekend, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Ciao.
much. Bye bye.